This is African American History is American History. Welcome. I'm your host, Harlan Kearsley. This program's goal is to foster understanding, promote discussion, and expand knowledge through stories of historical events, bios of unsung heroes, as well as timely and relevant news stories which, hopefully, will paint a vivid picture of the effects of segregation, discrimination, and bigotry on the lives of both blacks and whites. Comparisons will be made between the many racially fractured periods of American history and what's going on right now. Meta VAUX WARRICK was an American artist notable for celebrating Afrocentric themes. At the start of the Harlem Renaissance, Warrick was known for being a poet, painter, theater designer, and sculptor of the Black American experience. Born to a black middle-class family in Philadelphia on June 9, 1877, Meta VAUX WARRICK attended the Pennsylvania Museum School of Industrial Arts in 1897. In 1899, she left the U.S. to study in Paris, where she met and became the protege of French sculptor Auguste Rodin, famous for his piece, The Thinker. Rodin was so impressed with her work that he pronounced her, quote, a born artist. It was also in Paris that she met American sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois, who became a lifelong friend and confidant. He encouraged Warrick to draw from American and African American themes in her work. By the turn of the 20th century, she had achieved a reputation as a well-known sculptor in Paris. Warrick has been described as, quote, one of the most imaginative black artists of her generation. She returned to the United States in 1903 and met Dr. Solomon Carter Fuller in 1907. In 1909, they were married. The couple settled in Framingham, Massachusetts, where they were one of the first black families in town. Prominent African-American people visited their house often. Even the Prince of Siam stopped by. Meta VAUX WARRICK Fuller continued to create works of art against the norms of the day and, unfortunately, the objections of her husband that she should settle down and focus only on being a housewife, especially after she and Solomon had 3 children. However, Meta Warrick Fuller did not bow to the norms of the day, nor to her husband's expectations of a wife and mother. She continued her art career. Within the community, Warrick Fuller helped establish and was involved in the lighting of productions put on by the Framingham Dramatic Society. She was an active member of the St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, where she directed and costumed their plays and pageants.
Art must be the quintessence of meaning. Creative art means that you create yourself. Meta VAUX WARRICK Fuller, in a speech given at Livingstone College in 1950. In August of 1968, New York Assemblywoman Shirley Anita Chisholm was elected that state's Democratic National Committee woman. Shirley Chisholm also ran for the U.S. House of Representatives in 1968. She won by an almost 2-to-1 margin, becoming not only the first black woman elected to Congress, but also the only woman in her 1968 freshman class. During her New York legislative career, Shirley Chisholm faced more gender discrimination than racial discrimination. That's why the staff in her congressional office was comprised of only women, with about half of them black. It will be 4 years, January 25th, 1972 in Brooklyn, New York to be exact, before she formally announces that she's running in the 1972 presidential election. And with that announcement, Shirley Chisholm becomes the first black major party candidate to run for President of the United States.
This is African American History is American History. Ella Josephine Baker was born in Norfolk, Virginia on December 13, 1903, and grew up in Littleton, North Carolina.
Both my parents came from North Carolina in Warren County. My mother had a feeling that there was greater culture in North Carolina than obtained in Norfolk, Virginia, plus the fact she just didn't like the lowland lying climate there.
Her grandmother was a big influence on her. She was a former slave, and young Ella would listen intently as she told her stories of what life was like, having no rights whatsoever, and to be physically owned by another human being. Her grandmother spoke of being beaten and whipped by her slave master because she defiantly refused to marry a man he had picked out for her, a man she didn't even know. This and many other equally painful stories of injustice stayed with Ella Baker her whole life. In 1927, Ella graduated with a BA from Shaw University in North Carolina. An exceptional student, Ella was the valedictorian of her graduating class. After graduation, she moved to New York City, where she worked as a waitress to support herself. She became a community organizer and eventually landed a job as a journalist for the American West Indian News. In 1930, Ella became office manager for the Negro National News. That's where she met journalist George Schuyler, who would become her mentor. In 1930, during the Great Depression, Ella Baker and George Schuyler co-founded the Young Negroes Cooperative League, or YNCL. The goal of YNCL was to promote, organize, and educate the community about the economic advantages of pooling their funds in order to get better deals on goods and services. Ella was the secretary-treasurer, and by 1931 became the national director. In 1940, Ella became field secretary for the NAACP. She was also an advisor for the NAACP's New York Youth Council. In 1957, Ella moved to Atlanta, where she was one of the founders of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or SCLC, which was led by Martin Luther King Jr. The goal of the SCLC was to redeem the soul of America. They worked to accomplish this through nonviolent resistance. In 1960, Ella left the SCLC to form the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. SNCC was formed to give younger blacks who felt their issues were not being heard and addressed more of a voice in the movement. Like the SCLC, SNCC also started out with a nonviolent resistance agenda, but many within the organization soon grew impatient. They felt the movement wasn't making progress fast enough, and a pacifist approach was not the way to make that happen. Unfortunately, this created friction between Martin Luther King Jr. and SNCC. That's when Ella Baker stepped in. She encouraged those in SNCC who were disgruntled to look at the bigger picture. She explained that what they were trying to achieve went way beyond just integration. The broader goal was social change. Ella recommended that SNCC members view Dr. King's principle of nonviolence not as a be-all and end-all, but rather as more of a political tactic.
Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was more politically oriented. Part and parcel of the initial SNCC efforts was to not only go in for voter registration, but for political participation.
Right up until her death in 1986, Ella Josephine Baker continued to fight for civil rights, voters' rights, and women's rights. She died on her 83rd birthday in Harlem, New York. That was her home since 1927.
I have always thought that what is needed is the development of people who are interested not in being leaders as much as in developing leadership in others.
From the 1930s through the turbulent 1960s, her tireless work behind the scenes helped to define the civil rights movement as much more than just protesting for the right to vote, own a home, or even sit at a lunch counter. A strong and determined leader, Ella Baker saw the fight for civil rights as a struggle for humanity as a whole. That's Viola Liuzzo, a white woman from Michigan who believed so passionately in the fight for civil rights that, despite being a wife and mother of 5 children, helped organize Detroit protests, attended civil rights conferences, worked with the NAACP, and would eventually lose her life in the fight for equal rights for all. On March 25, 1965, she became the only white female protester to die in the civil rights movement. She was shot in the head by Klan members while giving a ride to a 19-year-old black man. One of the many civil rights marchers she had driven around Selma during the 1965 Selma to Montgomery marches that took place in Alabama. Born in the small borough of California, Pennsylvania, Viola Gregg Liuzzo moved with her family to Chattanooga, Tennessee at the age of 6. It was there that she first realized how unjust segregation and racism really is, when her family fell on hard times and experienced extreme poverty during the Depression. This was a condition not too unfamiliar to many African Americans at the time. But being white, her family afforded better social privileges due to Jim Crow laws. In 1941, Viola's family moved to Ypsilanti, Michigan, where her father, Heber Gregg, sought a job assembling bombs at the Ford Motors Company. Soon after, she dropped out of high school and eloped at the age of 16, but divorced 2 years later. Gregg then moved his family, including Viola, to segregated Detroit, which in the early 1940s was a city that had widespread race riots break out on an almost regular basis. Witnessing these horrific events would prove to have a major motivating influence on the young and strong-willed Viola's future civil rights work. In 1943, she married George Argyris. They had 2 children, Penny and Evangeline Mary. They divorced in 1949. She later married Anthony Liuzzo, a Teamsters union business agent. They had 3 children, Tommy, Anthony Jr., and Sally. Viola Liuzzo sought to return to school and attend the Carnegie Institute in Detroit. She then enrolled part-time at Wayne State University in 1962. She was academically still in her freshman year at the time of her death.
PBS News.
This is wrong. Here I am watching newsreel footage of civil rights marchers being beaten and killed in Alabama night after night from the comfort of my own living room. And all I can do is cry after every newscast.
Viola held to a strong desire to make a difference on as big a scale as she could.
It's wrong. I can't ignore this. I won't ignore this. I can't just sit here watching people get beat up. This is everybody's fight. I'm going. I'm driving to Selma.
Another motivating influence on Viola's activism was her close friendship with NAACP member Sarah Evans. The two met in a grocery store where Viola worked as a cashier. They both shared similar views and support for the civil rights movement.
You want to go where?
Selma, I'm
Yeah, I heard you. Have you lost your mind? Have you been watching the news? Alabama is a war zone. They're beating and killing Negroes left and right down there. Do you think they're going to go easy on you because you're a little blonde white woman? Viola, your own people are going to accuse you of acting out of your place, and they won't forgive that.
Sarah.
Viola, I swear I wish there were more white people as sincerely dedicated as you, but I would hate myself if I didn't ask. Are you sure you know what you're getting yourself into? I mean, protesting at Wayne State is one thing, but fighting segregation down in the belly of the beast is just...
Sarah, there's too many white people sitting around talking, just talking, about how bad things are, about how unfair things are. But they're not doing anything about it. And many of these are good people, people who know right from wrong, who know how bad things are. They still just sit around and talk. Well, I can't do that, Sarah. And I agree with you. If there were more white people dedicated to this fight, it'd be a whole lot easier to gain equal rights for everybody.
But you're a wife, a mother. Hell, girl, you got 5 little ones at home.
This fight is for them as well. Look, I'm not crazy. I know how dangerous this is, but I have to be part of this. I already received my instructions. I'll be working with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, delivering aid to the different rest stops along the march route, and I'll be recruiting and driving the marchers and volunteers. Sarah, I'll be making a difference.
And making enemies. Listen to me. Every Klan member, every bigoted redneck, every fool with hate in his heart will target you. Even some Negroes will be skeptical of your intentions. You'll be hit with hate mail, phone threats, cross burnings, and maybe worse. Are you prepared for that?
Yes.
It's just too dangerous. You know what happened during the first march?
Yeah, I know. I should be afraid, but I'm not. I don't know why, but I'm just not. I believe in this fight. I have an opportunity to do something concrete with my life, something historic, and the civil rights movement is that opportunity. You can't talk me out of this, Sarah. I'm going to Selma.
At that time, Selma, Alabama was seen as the epicenter of the civil rights movement. As Viola Liuzzo prepared herself to leave her husband and children, Penny, her 9-year-old daughter, entered her room with tears in her eyes.
Mommy, why do you want to leave us?
Oh, no, honey, no. I'm not leaving you. I'm just going away for a little bit. Mommy has a job to do.
I don't understand.
To tell you the truth, I'm not sure I understand it all myself. But you know how I'm always talking to you children about knowing right from wrong?
Uh-huh.
You know those people we've seen on the news in Selma, Alabama? Well, they're marching for their rights. The same rights that you and I have are denied to them.
Why?
For no other reason than the color of their skin. Now that's wrong, don't you think?
Yes, but I heard in school it's dangerous in Alabama. I'm afraid I'm never going to see you again, Mommy. I know it. I just know it.
Oh, Penny.
I'll go for you. Please. Please, Mommy. I'm little and I can run fast. Let me go in your place.
Oh, sweetheart. That's very brave of you. But you don't have to worry. You'll see me again. Of course you will. And you know why? Because I'm going to be very extra special careful. And I'll be back before you know it, honey. Promise.
But, Mommy...
I'll tell you what, Penny. Since you're doing so well with your cursive writing in school, how about you write me a letter and leave it on Mommy's nightstand so I'll have something nice to read when I come home? Would you do that for me?
Yes.
That's my big girl. I love you with all my heart, and that's what's going to bring me back to you. Because love always protects you from any danger. Did you know that?
No.
Well, it does. Now don't you forget to write me that letter.
I won't forget. I love you, Mommy.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Now I feel really protected.
On March 25th, after the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led thousands of nonviolent demonstrators on a 5-day, 54-mile march from Selma, Alabama, to the steps of the Capitol in Montgomery, Viola Liuzzo helped drive local marchers back to their colleges and homes in her 1963 Oldsmobile. She was assisted by Leroy Moten, a 19-year-old African-American. As they were driving along Route 80, a car with 4 Birmingham chapter Klan members who had traveled to Selma for the purpose of disrupting the campaign and discouraging any future outside supporters, pulled up alongside her car and shot her twice in the head, killing her instantly. Her car veered into a ditch and crashed into a fence. Although Moten was covered with blood, the bullets had missed him. He lay motionless when the Klansmen reached the car to make sure their victims were dead. After the car left, he began running for the next half hour, looking for help. He eventually flagged down a truck driven by Reverend Leon Riley, who was bringing civil rights workers back to Selma. Viola Liuzzo's funeral was held at the Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church in Detroit on March 30th, 1965. Many prominent members of both the civil rights movement and government came to pay their respects, including Martin Luther King, NAACP Executive Director Roy Wilkins, Congress on Racial Equality National Leader James Farmer, and Teamsters President Jimmy Hoffa. In the aftermath of Viola Liuzzo's death, her good friend Sarah Evans became the permanent caretaker of her 5 young children. Less than 2 weeks after her murder, a charred cross was found in front of the Liuzzo residence. The 4 Klan members in the car, Collie Wilkins, William Eaton, Eugene Thomas, and FBI informant Gary Thomas Rowe, were quickly arrested, and within 24 hours, President Lyndon Johnson appeared personally on national television to announce their arrest. All were indicted for Liuzzo's death, except for Rowe, who served as a witness. All white juries were selected for the trials. All 3 resulted in mistrials. The FBI was still concerned that they might be held accountable for their informant Gary Rowe's role in the murder, so he was kept in the Federal Witness Protection Program, while then FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover initiated a campaign to discredit Viola Liuzzo in the eyes of the public. Hoover leaked false allegations to the media that she was an unfit mother, a drug addict, purposely went down south to have sex with black men, and that her husband was involved with organized crime. Despite the fact that there wasn't a shred of evidence to back up Hoover's allegations, several newspapers still decided to run with these claims. A Ladies' Home Journal magazine survey, taken a week after Viola Liuzzo's death, asked its readers what kind of woman would leave her family for a civil rights demonstration. 55% of the readers thought she brought her death on herself. If there is one positive thing to come out of Viola Liuzzo's death, it's that despite the FBI's smear campaign, her murder was one of the most important factors in helping to pass the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which removed barriers to voting such as literacy tests and poll taxes. In 1991, she was honored by the women of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference with a marker on Highway 80, where she was murdered. Her name is also inscribed on a civil rights memorial in the Michigan State Capitol. Viola Liuzzo was only 39 years old when she died. This has been African American History is American History. You've been listening to the Women's History Month special, written and directed by Harlan Kearsley. The engineer for the Viola Liuzzo segment was Kathy Gormley. The voice actors, Kim Bay as the voice of Meta VAUX Warrick Fuller in the Meta VAUX Warrick Fuller segment, and the narrator in the Shirley Chisholm segment, as well as the voice of Ella Baker in the Ella Baker segment. Benja K. Thomas as Sarah Ivers, Aislinn Berry as Penny, and Sarah Cushing Downs as Viola Liuzzo in the Viola Liuzzo segment. I'm Harlan Kearsley, and on behalf of everyone here at African American History is American History, thank you for listening. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe. It's free, and once you do, you'll be notified as soon as new episodes are posted. So, thanks again, and please stay safe. African American History is American History. Copyright H.C. Kearsley, 2022.